Information in the early 18th century moved at the speed of wind and tide, but the network carrying that information was dense, spanning oceans and empires to connect distant ports into a single global web. This is a physical node in that network, the June 8, 1721 issue of the American Weekly Mercury, printed in Philadelphia. Analyzing this broadside column by column reveals it as an active, contemporary intelligence briefing. The people buying this paper were wealthy colonial merchants and political elites. They required accurate, actionable data about the volatile global empire they relied on for their wealth. Across a single sheet of paper, the publisher gathers reports of distant sieges, violent European crimes, systemic financial panic, and the logistics of the colonial economy into a raw data feed. This document places Philadelphia at the center of a global network, contradicting any notion of the American colonies as isolated outposts. We begin at the foreign dusk. The intelligence starts thousands of miles away, at the contested borders of the Spanish Empire in the Mediterranean. Looking at the top left column, we find a dispatch routed from Madrid, dated January 10th, 5 months before publication. The text details precise logistical movements. Spanish troops are being shipped from the ports of Alicante and Cartagena to reinforce their army in Africa, specifically landing at the enclave of Ceuta. The paper identifies a clear threat. The Spanish garrison is defending against local forces, described here as barbarians, who are receiving fresh troop reinforcements every single day. Despite expecting a fourth direct assault, the official dispatch projects confidence. It reports that the Spanish camp operates like a well-fortified town, completing defensive works with an assurance of a victory. Philadelphia merchants relied on this information because the stability of the Mediterranean impacted the security of the same trade routes that brought the foreign gold and silver coins logged elsewhere in this issue. Moving past military strategy, the briefing shifts to domestic European control. The paper syndicates explicit reports of violent crimes and their subsequent state-mandated punishments. Panning to the right column, we find a letter sourced from Petersburg, routed through London on January 28th. It documents an incident of severe religious violence. A man from the town of Moscow intercepted the local archbishop during a procession. The report states he struck the archbishop several times with a club while shouting horrid imprecations and blasphemies. The punishment is reported with clinical detachment. In pursuance of his sentence, his right hand was cut off and his body was burnt. Scanning down to the January 21st dispatches, the focus moves to Edinburgh. A man named Nicol Mushet, having made a full confession, was executed for the murder of his own wife. Right below that, the focus shifts to the London underworld and the capture of a thief known as Filewood, referred to here as a famous Newgate bird. The paper tracks his career trajectory, noting he graduated from being a little pickpocket to a notorious housebreaker. His presence in London marks a failure of the state's penal system. He was previously caught and transported out of the country, but illegally returned. Now he faces Newgate Prison on fresh charges of burglary. Syndicating the lethal consequences of challenging religious or legal authority reinforced a rigid, heavily policed social hierarchy for the colonial audience. The briefing now turns to threats originating from within the British Crown, political sedition, and the collapse of its financial systems. In the upper right column, a January 26th dispatch from Brussels monitors the activities of English expatriates living on the continent. English friars and nuns are reported holding great rejoicings and hosting a splendid collation for a large number of ladies. The occasion was seditious, celebrating the birth of the exiled pretender's son, a challenge to the ruling British monarch. That political instability is immediately compounded by economic disaster at the bottom of the right-hand column, dated London, January 31st. A brief sentence notes that the papers of Mr. Clerk, solicitor of the South Sea Company, were seized by the Master of the Black Rod, enforcing an order from the House of Lords. A solicitor's confiscated paperwork made the transatlantic news because of what the South Sea Company represented. This William Hogarth engraving illustrates the resulting fallout from the company's collapse in 1720. The visual captures institutional panic. The rampant speculation surrounding the South Sea Company wiped out the fortunes of the British upper class, stalling the empire's financial engine and throwing London into chaos. Between exiled rivals celebrating in Brussels and government enforcers raiding financial offices in London, the imperial center appeared deeply unstable when viewed from the American periphery. For the final section of the briefing, we leave the curated news of European capitals and turn to the unvarnished administrative data of the American coast. Moving to the next page, we find the local dispatches. The top left column logs the news arriving in New York on June 5th, primarily carried by incoming ship captains. The information here is unverified and delayed. Captain Peyton, arriving from Madeira, passes on rumors that the Pope is dead and that the plague is still ravaging France. Just below these rumors, the paper prints the official port logs. Along the list of arriving and departing sloops, the text records the arrival of a ship named the Crown Galley. Inserted neatly between mundane colonial appointments and cargo manifests, the log lists the ship's freight, with 117 Negroes from Africa. Moving to the right-hand column, the classified section maps the mechanics of the local microeconomy. A detailed advertisement offers a reward for the capture of 3 young Irishmen, Patrick Boyd, Miles Ward, and Thomas Shaughnessy. They are described by their clothing and accents, having escaped their servitude by fleeing in a small boat. At the very top of these advertisements, a merchant named Joseph Redman issues a public notice regarding currency exchange, stating he will accept lion dollars for all payments at a fixed rate of 5 shillings. This is a silver lion dollar, originally minted in the Dutch Republic. Because the British Crown restricted the export of sterling to its own colonies, colonial merchants like Redman relied on a patchwork of foreign silver just to keep their local commerce functioning. Placing mundane exchange rates for Dutch silver on the same page as the open commodification of indentured and enslaved human beings reveals the exact economic foundation required to sustain the 18th century mercantile system. Viewed as a complete dataset, the breadth of information is apparent. On 2 sheets of paper, a Philadelphia merchant tracks military sieges in Africa, European public executions, financial collapse in London, and slave ships arriving in New York. This document proves that colonial elites were highly informed citizens. They continuously mapped a vast interconnected worldview because their wealth depended on understanding the shifting currents of a global empire. Focusing on the raw data of the era reveals the specific fears and cold arithmetic that shaped the 1721 worldview.
The Daily Dispatch